Oh.
So we're live now. Welcome everybody to our Argentina segment. We're very pleased to share with all of our listeners, viewers, both online and in the future for the stream, the experience of HumanEdu. HumanEdu is a very special project, which we will share now. Is Juan Mora and Araujo is here with me now. Juan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself while we wait for our other panelists, and then we'll jump straight into the presentation.
Hi, Gabriel. Thanks for having me, and hello, everybody who's listening. I'm Juan Mora Araujo. I live in Argentina, but I spend my life between Argentina and the US because my wife is from the US. So we've lived in both countries, and I work in both countries and across the region. I'm an education consultant with experience in policy, in education design, and in high school reform. So the various things I do um, impact education in various forms, whether it's working with governments or schools who are trying to transform the way they do things, or designing educational programs to impact the community, usually with secondary school students. And I have a particular interest in environmental and regenerative education. I was the national director for environmental education for Argentina. And I often say a bug stung me and it stuck. So I've been infected with the desire to change the world and to think about the environment, and I can't get it off my heart.
That's a great poison to drink. I think we need a lot more people drinking from that poison. Thank you, Juan. So let's share with everybody, because images are a lot more expressive than what we can say, what HumanEdu is about. So this is the second time. Let me share my screen. This is the second time that we do HumanEdu. We started last year. And basically, HumanEdu is a space that we host for educators who are interested in the development of the human person. Now, this should be everybody, but we know that's not the case, unfortunately. So this is a convening, an event, a get together. We don't like to call it a conference. Highly participative, very interactive, which takes place in Punta del Este. This year we held it in Garzón, the Garzón School. Some of you may have been present or can share later in the stream. Sam and Leona, the co-heads of Garzón, talking about their project. And this is the school, and this is what we did. So let me share some photos with you as we describe it. As you can see, this is a gathering that is highly ritualistic, where we convene in circles and we discuss the importance of the human person in education through various modes of expression. We do not believe that there is one way to cater to human development. Everybody who can uh, account for adding to the human development in education is welcome in HumanEdu. Um, Paradoxically, it's the probably the only event of its type, at least in Latin America. There's all kinds of professional development opportunities for people in different areas, AI, technology, math, science, etc. But unfortunately, there is very little or nothing when it comes to human development, when it comes to educating the person. And together with a group of like-hearted educators, Juan Piventura, Ben Walden, Danny Vilacetru, um, Leandro Horacio, who are now joining us, and Juan himself, we thought of starting, or we felt, better said, we need to mind our words. We felt that it was the right time to host a space for those who believe that humanity is at the heart of education. And again, this should be probably something that we should take for granted. And sadly, it's not. And you can see there that this is not your usual conference. And as we move along the photographs in the beautiful setting of Garzon School, you will also see that we interact with nature, that it's highly interactive and participative. It's very emotional. We start off with a retreat where we explore some of the inner dimensions of the role of being an educator. We'll talk about that in a minute. And it's a joyous occasion because when people who feel the have the same center of gravity in terms of their values get together, some magical things happen. And it was an absolutely joyous event, which we hope to continue doing year after year. So that's HumanEdu. There's Juanpi, there's Juan himself. There you are, in somebody in the meditation, Leona and Sam. So this is the introduction to HumanEdu, but beyond, of course, we're not going to spend the whole hour sharing or discussing the event. The theme at large is related to human education and the value of emphasizing the human dimension of education, not as opposed to, but together with, concurrently with many of the other dimensions of learning. So let's wait for a second because Leandro and Danny are joining us now. Let's wait until they're there and we can. There you are, Leandro and Danny. Welcome. We're live with our audience.
Hi,
Um,
Gabby.
Maybe you can just briefly introduce yourselves as we plunge deep into discussing a little bit about HumanEdu and the importance of human education.
Yes, sure. Hi, Juan. How are you doing? My name is Leandro Bulacio. I'm an educator here at St. Andrew's Scott School in Argentina. I've been working as an educator for over 10 years, and I also work with the youth and adolescents and young people over 20s. And I'm really passionate about doing this work and learning a lot from people all around the world. So really happy to be here and joining you.
My name is Daniel Vilasetru. I work at San Andrews for 25 years. I'm very interested on emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence, and I'm very glad to be here.
So we've already briefly mentioned what HumanEdu was. We've shown our viewers a few photos of the event. We briefly told them about what this is about. And as I mentioned a minute ago with Juan, we don't want to dwell too much on the event itself, but rather on the dimensions of what we're trying to do and the importance of human education. So as a kind of icebreaker, I'd love for the three of you to share with us why you believe education should be more focused on the development of the human person at this age and time. So anybody who wants to start, please do so.
Wow. Bueno, I'll give it a go. There's a saying that says that one cannot pour from an empty cup. And thinking about this dimension that is mostly overlooked, the the dimension of the self, the dimension of the inner work. I believe that education has mostly been focused on the curriculum, and during these times, we've noticed the importance of bringing well-being, bringing and having these spaces of inner work. But there's something that's really important to me. I think you could have mentioned it, but it's the work that we as educators and teachers need to embrace first in order to connect and be fostering support for the students. The deepest change in education begins with the inner transformation that we as educators need to embrace. And I think that that's a crucial thing we need to understand. We need to, I believe in authentic authenticity in education. Children connect with us or for who we are and not what we know or what we bring. I remember my own teachers and in my own practice, by connecting with a person and with the teacher itself, and by what I felt when I was around him or her. And I believe that's a crucial invitation to me as well, to have this spaces. Bueno, I work as a coordinator in the cell team, and this is like our office here. We kind of have meetings with students, and the invitation is always to have a break and to embrace what's really true and real in their lives, what's really happening, apart from all the things that are occurring in the normal school life. So that would be kind of why I feel this is really, really, really important to me.
Thank you,
I
Leandro.
was always surprised that there wasn't in schools a place to talk about love, being brave, being a good person, all the things that teenagers are very keen to speak about. And also, I think we are all searching for joy
Mm.
in life. And so we have to give some tools to the students to find their joy. And well, my experience was that if you go in that way to students, they are interested, very interested on talking about these things, and it's part of their education. Juan?
Yeah, Gabi, it's very interesting because school curricula across the world was designed for students to understand and discover the world through various lenses. What's always been interesting to me is that in order to understand your place in the world and to set some direction or some intention for your life, why you're here, what you would like to do, how you would like to contribute, which I think are fundamental educational questions, it is absolutely necessary for you to understand who you are and what it means to be yourself and what it means to be human. So it seems paradoxical that we teach about the world, but we leave out perhaps 50%, if not more, of what should be, I think, educational content, which is the internal world. Today, in particular, I think there's another reason, which is quite relevant now, which is we're at the dawn of a new era. The era of human beings coexisting with artificial intelligences and artificial entities, whether we call them robots or whatever it is that they are, but we're not going to be living alone. And the things that we do, or many of the things that we do, will be done by machines. So I think increasingly the role of schools and of education is going to be to help us understand what makes us different. What is that piece which is entirely and exclusively human, which cannot be replaced by a machine? And until now, that has been left out of schools. And I suspect that in the future, a lot of what we currently do in schools is going to be kind of moved to the side to make way for an entirely new education, which is the education that explores humanity.
It's interesting that you mentioned AI and this emerging phenomenon that will literally transform our lives. We're always concerned about AI emulating humans and the capabilities that AI is acquiring, even simulating feelings, etc. And we forget the other half of that problem, which is that we may be meeting machines in the middle, that we are dehumanizing ourselves. So in the spectrum, it's not only that AI is resembling humans more and more, it's also that we are becoming more like machines. So all this is to say, to ask for the three of you, if we accept for a moment that human education is very important and should take central role in the new pedagogy. How do you do that? How do you educate humans to enhance their humanity?
I think we have to provide to students safe spaces where they can talk about their feelings, about what is going on in their lives, and also adults.
Hold on, Danny. What is a sacred space? Because for many, a sacred space would be a church or a religious space.
No, safe space. A space where you can talk about life. You can talk seriously about how you are, how you're doing, what things are happening to you. Talk about anything about human life. So to provide a safe space is very important, because if not, the kids won't talk from their hearts. And we find out that if you achieve that, and students start speaking with their hearts, there's a whole atmosphere, a quiet atmosphere, a listening atmosphere that makes that a very unique space.
Adding to what Danny is saying, I believe that another important condition for that is that we as educators, facilitators of the space, become role models of what we would like them to experience, to share the invitation. We as mentors, we need to take an active place in showing them what is it and how is it that we can connect as humans, and we can open a space for vulnerability, to share what's really truth inside ourselves in that inner journey, and also to really experience ourselves as mirrors. We can be windows through which we can view the world around us, and we can also be mirrors for each other, where we can really give honest and loving feedback to let us know what is the impact that we are creating around us, how we are interacting and affecting the people around us. And I believe that we don't have that. We don't really have that moment in time where we can really talk about what we feel and be heard about that and receive feedback about what is the impact of that.
We'll go to Juan first, and then there's a lot to unpack there. We'll come back to some of your points.
You know, it's interesting. Several well-known educators have said that learning doesn't happen without reflection. And it's fascinating to me. I started my educational journey teaching yoga, meditation, and breathing exercises in schools. In other words, contemplative practices that invite you to look within. And in order to do so, of course, you need that safe space that Danny was just talking about. There's an Argentine educational leader and writer who's Bernardo Blechmar, who says he's always been interested by the fact that when you go to a yoga class anywhere in the world, at the end of the exercises of the sequence, you lie down and you allow the experience to settle in. And in education, we generally don't create that space. We seldom create a space to reflect on what has happened. So I'm going to give you a concrete example. A student is learning math, and maybe they're frustrated by math. Maybe they're not very good at math. Maybe they have a small berrinche, a small breakdown because they don't understand a mathematical concept. And perhaps they do well or don't do well on the math exam. And that's all really a reflection on the experience of math and the knowledge of math. What schools rarely do is ask the student or invite the student to reflect upon their own experience and what do you discover about yourself as you attempt to learn math. We rarely ask the question, what did you discover about yourself and who you are in this unit, whatever that is, history, social studies, literature, math. And I think we're leaving out a huge learning reflection because you may not understand the math, but perhaps you've discovered that in frustration, you become angry. And I promise you that if you become angry when you're frustrated about math, you will probably become angry when you're frustrated about anything throughout the rest of your life, unless you make some room to reflect, understand, and transform. And that second piece, I'm not talking about the math now, I'm talking about the self-reflection and the self-knowledge we've excluded from the educational experience. So we have students who perhaps are wonderful about subjects and completely illiterate about self.
We'll go back to some of the points that Danny and Leandro raised, but I want to stay there for a second. What happens when a student doesn't do well in math or in literacy or in science? What's going on internally in terms of their inner self? What does school tell that student when they don't do well?
That's a great question. And maybe I'll start from the most general. School cultures in I don't want to generalize because some schools are doing wonderful work. Traditionally, school culture in general doesn't make the best use of the culture of learning from mistakes. So generally, the mistake is punished in some way, whether it's a low grade, a failure. So generally, the stigma is you have failed. And in many countries in the world, the students who receive permanent messages of failure tend to classify themselves as either educational failures or what's perhaps even a lot more dangerous is the idea that I cannot learn. I am not good at learning. So that creates a self-image which is very problematic and that problematic self-image is going to follow that individual for the rest of their life unless they then find other ways to heal or revert that stigma.
Why is this so? Why do you think that? I empathize with what you said. There's so many wonderful teachers, so many wonderful schools that are attempting to reverse the trend, but unfortunately, the general trend is what you've described, no? That a lot of the success or failure of the school is intimately associated with the health of the children's self-esteem, no? And again, as we go back now to Leandro and Danny, I think it's important to go one layer deeper. Why do you think this is still happening? And it's not, I would say, Juan, it's very tempting to blame the system, the various systems in place, the district, the province, the national laws, the expectations, etc. But deep down within, there's still a lot of that in the day-to-day teaching. Why do you think this is so?
I think that
Sorry, Danny, go ahead.
let's
Dale.
imagine this. You have a safe space to talk about life, and one student says, I fail in math, and I'm feeling awful about it. I start sharing. You ask the other students, anyone who has the same feeling, and probably they're going to say yes. So the first thing is that we have to create safe spaces where they can listen to each other. And the second thing is that the adult has to has an input there to you can say, well, are you living the math thing as a process or just a result? For example, no?
But what my question is, Danny, we'll get back to the safe space in a second. But my question is, I mean, I think this is at the heart of the work that we're trying to do. why does that math teacher, poor math teacher, or stereotyping a math teacher? No, and I'm a math teacher, so yeah.
Gabby,
Um,
I don't want to state the obvious, but I think the whole system, um, the educational train, metaphorically speaking, is completely results oriented instead of process oriented. So, so that's one thing that sets, the at the end of the whole process, what what the system, I don't want to talk about the system because it's so degeneralized, but really we continue to value that end result, which is symbolically represented by how did you do? What's the letter grade, the number grade? Nobody spends any time looking at the personal learning trajectory and the process, except perhaps wonderful. I'm gonna again generalize to the obvious, but wonderful arts or wonderful physical education teachers who invite their students to measure themselves against themselves and to understand and look at what progresses have been made, what changes have happened. That's a little more process oriented, perhaps, but it's still even results oriented in the sense that at the end of the day, you're evaluating how you did on yesterday's race versus last week's race. And I think we're missing out on something quite wonderful, actually, which is what is happening at every step of the way, regardless of the end result.
it's yeah, again, this is very we're swimming in very, very deep waters. What you just mentioned, Juan, in terms of some of the subjects that lend themselves perhaps better to a coaching model, or one where the educator is more a partner of the student in learning than a judge. I would volunteer to say that it has to do with the subject matter also, which are more closely associated with fun and joy than maybe some of the other subjects. And being a science person and a math person, I always half jokingly say, why don't people see the beauty in equations and in a beautiful math or science demonstration? But it's sad that we've stereotyped many of the quote unquote academic subjects as being sterile or devoid of any passion, beauty, and sense of purpose. But anyway, I think that's as a friend of mine says, that's attempting to boil the ocean. So let's go back to what Danny mentioned, and then we'll go back to what Leandro mentioned. Danny, it's all very nice to say safe spaces, etc., but how do you do that? Because if you move from a super rigorous, let's stay with math, we're math teachers. If they move from a math lesson and then they go to a lesson where you invite them to host a safe space, how do you do that? Because I don't think kids can transition so easily between the kind of conventional expectation of the academic environment into that safe space. How do you do it?
I think how we did it is we understood that there has to be a culture about it. Kids should be expecting to have a safe space weekly, and that took us many years to make the culture of the school. The students are expecting the meeting, the safe meeting, the safe community meeting. And another thing is that we connect with them personally. We really believe that we should be significant adults in their lives.
Danny, yeah, but for a lot of the people who are going to watch this video, so your kids come in, they file into your class, or you enter their class, and they've just had an academic lesson where they've been, 100%
in their
on
heads.
in their heads. How do you create that safe space? How, because
We
kids can't transition as a snap the finger. How do
enjoying.
you do that?
We've understood that it takes we need to reconnect with our body. If we are in our heads and we having great ideas and we are trying to allow them to connect with their feelings, with their hearts, as we call it, we need to create the conditions for that to occur. And to do that, we've discovered that there are certain thresholds that we need to cross. We need to start by creating those conditions, and we do that in several ways. When they come into this space, for example, we allow them to relax and lay on the floor. We can do a silence practice for 3 minutes. We start breathing together. We listen to a beautiful song. We invite one of the students to play the guitar for us. We pour and we share like a scent and we burn a candle, or we burn something, or we darken our, but we need to start working in that shift. We need our mindset to settle down and to allow ourselves to understand that we are no longer at school. That's how we call it. We are entering a different realm, the inner realm. And in order to do that, there are many ways, and we are always inviting us as educators and teachers to find the most suitable and organic ways in which we feel comfortable, because we cannot do what everyone does. We need to find our own ways that help us to connect and reconnect with ourselves, and as well experience different ways, because there are in this group, in the group, there are different personalities and there are different ways in which things occur. We also work with our body, so we can start like stretching ourselves. We sit in a circle to see our faces. We salute each other. We greet each other. Different, many ways in which we start uh, like slowing down. There's like an inertia. There's a velocity in which we live that we need to find a way that to help us really stop and be able to be aware of where we are, where we are entering, and starting to connect with each other and with ourselves.
Gabby, may I add to what Leandro just said?
Of course.
He's reminding me, Leandro, you're reminding me of the first day at HumanEdu this year, when you arranged a beautiful space in a circle and we sat around in a circle. And I remember during that morning, I thought a lot about a Harvard professor, Eleanor Duckworth, who has an incredible book of essays called The Having of Wonderful Ideas, based on a class that she taught at Harvard for many, many years and which continues to be taught. And I was thinking, what is the space that invites us to have wonderful experiences or wonderful ideas? And I think a lot about the classroom as a technology, if you will. The whiteboard is a technology, the projector is a technology, the book is a technology. Well, the room itself is a technology, which could be arranged to invite us to have certain experience or to not have them. I've been to many, many classrooms around the world where symbolically the classroom is in such a state of disarray that it would be rare for a student to think that something sacred or of high value is happening in that space. So I think something easy that every educator can do, and I think we should reflect more on this, is how do I want to arrange this space? And this doesn't require a particular set of tools or resources. It's just how do I arrange and present this space so that it is inducive to a certain experience. And, like we said before, perhaps if you're a social science teacher, the experience is different than if you're a meditating teacher but I think the space is not neutral to the experience that you're trying to having the students have. And I know your office, and I know the way you prepare the space for students to have a particular experience that's safe enough for them to open their hearts and share. Well, any teacher of any subject could do the same with their space and their designed experience. We rarely think of the physical space as a tool that's inviting or conducive to that experience. And I think that's a wonderful invitation. And you both do it very well at St. Andrews.
There's a wonderful quote that we've shared many times in our gatherings from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who seemed to be, vomiting quotes at every step. No, everything you read is, we all stumble to string three words together, and Ralph Waldo Emerson seems to have been able to produce quotes like by the second. But he said, who you are speaks so loudly that I cannot hear who you say you are. Again, who you are speaks so loudly that I cannot hear who you say you are. And that applies a lot to our teaching profession, no? And that brings us to the other theme that Leandro brought up in terms of how can we teach that which we're not, no? And can I invite you to reflect on how we work with the adults in education at every level. No, Juan, you've been working with governments and leaders at every level. How do we deal with the authenticity that inevitably transmits itself and becomes, for good or for bad, how we work?
Yeah, I want to make a reference to something I heard yesterday when Sam and Leona were talking with you about what some referred to as the 5%. I don't know who started that conversation, but whether it's the 5% of schools that are doing things in a different way or the 5% of educators in any school, I think the number is actually larger. And I think one of the things that we discovered in HumanEdu and in other gatherings, I think all stakeholders, government stakeholders, educators, principals and directors, parents and students, this very conversation is happening in so many different spaces. I think we are all thinking about how to transform the way we do this thing called education. And it's a big wondering why things continue to be mostly the way they have been if so many of us are having this conversation. But I'm actually rather hopeful. I think we all know and understand, and I include policymakers at the government level, that things need to change. Changing the system is very difficult for many reasons, and we could perhaps have that conversation a different day. But I think the fact that we're all thinking about it and getting together to talk about it is quite significant, actually, because I think we need to recognize how many we are before we notice that the glass is rather half full than half empty. So I left very inspired from HumanEdu mostly because I thought, oh, wow, I'm not alone. There's tons of us. There's so many of us thinking and having the very same conversations. And I think we need to speak up. I think we need to be very open about the way we think, and we need to talk to many stakeholders. I think educators shouldn't just talk to educators. I think we need to talk to students, to parents, to policymakers, to government agents, and create these cross references.
Thank you. Leandro, can you share what you've done with adults, with teachers, and with some of the not so young in terms of awakening their sense of purpose and vocation?
Yes, sure. But I would like to address that this teaching practice is a really solitary profession. We seldomly share classes with other teachers and teach at the same time. And when I personally enter and I go into a class with my students, there are lots of voices in my head that start coming up, showing up. It's as if like all my personal story lights up when I'm in front of the kids, and I start wondering how good I'm doing. Am I creating an impact? Am I being of amusement for them, or am I cheering them up? Am I knowledgeable enough? Can they trust me? Am I caring enough? So all of these voices inhabit me, are inside of my own head when I'm with them. And that occurs all the time. And even if I'm not aware of that at a certain moment in time. So one of the things that it's most important to me is to be connected with those voices and to be aware of what is my personal story with teaching, what is my personal story with each of my students, because if not, I'll be projecting a lot of my fears to them. I'll be projecting and acting out things that might be of not good not good use for them. And I think that it's a really crucial thing for me to work with. Um, Regarding the purpose itself, or I think that it's really important to always remind ourselves why we initially fell in love with this profession. And if we are not in love with what we're doing, then we need to stop and really think why we're here, why we're here. Because we, as you said, as the Emerson quote mentioned, we teach what you're saying speaks so no what you are speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you're saying, or who you say you are. It's that we are contagious. We are living energy, and we and teach, and the kids are the first one who connect with that. They are the ones that look at us and start screening us and notice if we are being our authentic selves, or if we are talking and saying things because I don't know, we think that is the correct thing to say. Um, and in order to do that, to really be connected, we need to address our inner practice, our inner self first, and then go in order to go out and connect with students.
I think we can now do something that is dear to our heart and that you mentioned, Leandro, which is model what we would like to see in others. So let's have an open invitation to share our own journey of awakening. How did each of the four of us arrive at where we are with a sense of awareness of the importance of humanity and education? Can we share our own journey very briefly? Danny, do you want to start?
Sure. Uh,
Mm.
I have Parkinson's disease from 15 years ago, already. And the first year of the diagnosis, I went to my class of emotional intelligence. I didn't say anything to the kids, but the kids felt something. Kids felt something. I think that I was so affected by the news that I had no defenses. But I opened up my heart and shared my heart with them. And that is what happened in that class, that there was something in the air that happens only when you speak from the heart to you to the student hearts. And that is very magical. So what I would say is that you need to have courage and to have the conviction that speaking from the heart is a good thing, and it really creates community, because when you speak from the heart, you talk to the hearts of the students.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe I can go and then pass it on to Leandro. When I was in my 20s, I signed up for a breathing meditation program that then I became a trained instructor to teach for the Art of Living Foundation. And I had never done anything like yoga or meditation. I didn't know what to expect. In fact, I thought this was going to be impossible. But I sat down and I did a series of breathing exercises that then after doing, you're invited to just sit quietly with not much instruction. You kind of just sit. And because there was no intention to meditate, I wasn't even thinking about what would happen to my mind or my thoughts. But there was a physiological relationship between the rhythms of the breath and then my thoughts. And then I found myself in a state of calm that I had never experienced in that way before. Because not that I had never experienced it, I had never been aware of it. And now I was present, I was aware, I was noticing what was happening. And it was wonderful. And I also felt very creative and very full of energy. Anyway, I finished that day and I remember thinking, why have I never learned this? Why has no one ever taught me to close my eyes and tap into a source of creative energy? And I don't know when it dawned on me that education as we know it generally, and again, this was 25 years ago, things have changed, and now many schools teach meditation of various sorts, but for the most part, we've left out very ancient, very, very old contemplative practices that fully contribute to our understanding of who we are. And so that's how I started my journey. I started going to schools and knocking on doors and saying, I would like to teach a very simple meditation program. Initially, it was very hard and then slowly became very popular. And I think now all over the world, there are many, many experiences and many schools that accept the importance of contemplative practice. But when I started, it was very rare. And that's what led me to an education journey.
Thank you, Juan. In my case, I believe that my own journey to becoming an educator was like a random act of that really happened. The universe conspired somehow. But the truth is that when I finished school, I had no real vocation, no idea of what to do. My dad was a strict man. He said, well, you should study economics, engineering, something, a hard subject. So I studied economics and I did well because I learned how to play the game. I knew the tools and I knew how to apply them. So I entered and started working in different firms when I graduated, and I worked for over 10 years in the private sector. I think the thing that really moved me and my awakening started when I became a dad. When I had Mateo, something's shifted inside of me. Um, and I felt the urge to really be a model to him in what I would love him to experience in his life. Um, at that moment, I had a real personal life crisis. Um, I started having like I couldn't sleep, and this process took like 2 years time. So I've been really uh, having a hard time for those 2 years, um, not really feeling okay with myself, not really feeling that I was doing what I expected my life to be and unfold. I started feeling that I could have like a disease and die instantly at any moment, and that I hadn't really lived my life fully. And hopefully, I had my wife along my side, and she was a crucial pillar for me to start acknowledging this, to be aware of this. And I reconnected with Juanpi, with Dani, here in the St. Andrews School. I'm a former student here, and suddenly that invitation came. Well, haven't you even considered becoming a teacher? You've got like an economic background. You can be like start being like a math teacher here, and then if you feel called to uh, experience the inner work that we are doing, the inner practice, maybe you can start even teaching the cell space and how we do it. So I was I was really shocked and scared, and taking that leap of faith, as Joseph Campbell says, was like it felt like a death to me, and it was really a death to me. What I knew is that I wanted to feel alive, and that was not happening. I wanted to really experience the feeling of being alive, connected to people, connected to myself, and I really found that in school. I really find that connection with students, the authenticity they bring, the joy, the truth in what's going on, and speaking their minds, and that's something I cherish. I was 33 years old then when I started here. I'm about to turn 43, uh, and it was a transformation, a complete transformation, and I fell in love with that. Um, and I had to resign, or to let go many of the safety things that I had, like my wage. I completely, that was a turnover, and I working in the private sector and working in the educational system. But anyways, the feeling of really starting to have like a decision in my own life, and starting walking that path, um, was invaluable, and it brought so much passion and love and connection, and sharing that with students, and inviting them also to experience that, to connect with with their boons and with their treasures, and choose who they want to be, who they really really want to be, and who they resonate being, and bringing that out now to the world. uh, that's really inspiring to me.
Thank you. It's my turn as we wrap up the segment. When I threw out the question, I suddenly realized that I had never thought about that. That I never asked myself that question, and as you were, so that's why I waited until the end. I guess it wasn't too much of an epiphany. It was more of a gradual process for me. As like yourself, parenthood was a big factor. Things that I read, people that I met. But now that I look upon it, I think the greatest external factor that pushed me into more of an introspection that resulted in a shifting of my internal values was that I had was my work, that I had two leadership positions in big schools, and it was contrary to my nature to accept the what came with the role. And now that I look upon it, I realize that that need that I intimately felt to not be like many other people whose egos got the best of them and who believed that they were the role, and they lost their purpose in the process, pushed me into a great deal of introspection. And it was that process that I think helped me realize that what really matters in education, no? That a lot of what I had derived value from was not to be denied. I still love learning. I still love knowledge. I still love a good scientific reading, but that was actually subordinated to some of the deeper issues that have to do with a person, no? And again, it's not one thing. I think in my case, it was more maturing. As you grow in life, as you I think that like, I'm sorry, I'm thinking out loud. No, I think that meeting so many people and having to deal with so many problematic situations gave me a sense of compassion and empathy that, had I not been forced to be in so many difficult meetings, I wouldn't have acquired. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think we have our own unique journey, but I never thought of that. Anyway, um, thanks for this. Uh, I would like to close, and let's start with Juan because Juan has to run to another meeting. Um, can we close with an invitation for those who will be listening to this conversation to join us in HumanEdu in our next one, and why?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think I speak for everyone at HumanEdu. I think we all left um, wishing we had spread the word to more of us because the experience was absolutely unique and invaluable. The setting and the conversations we had and the depth, and the human connections we made. So I think, well, for me, certainly, I will not only come back, but hope to come back with a larger group of educators. And I think it's a really unique opportunity to connect with others, but also to connect with yourself and to reconnect with why it is that you do what you do.
Thank you, Juan, and thank you for
Juan.
sharing the space with
Thank
us.
you,
And
Juan.
we free you
I
up
miss
for
you. I
next
miss
one.
you.
I miss you too. I've been thinking about you. Thank you for having me. See you soon.
See
See you,
you.
Juan.
Bye.
Gaby, I think the truth is that we need each other, and we cannot do things on our own. There's a necessity of coming together. We need to start weaving and connecting to each other to really help achieve if we believe that this is really important. I think we do. We need to start coming together, taking action, involving ourselves, and working together. And I believe uh, there are many teachers out there that can resonate with this invitation and would really love to know that they are not alone. There are many of us around there reaching out and wanting to learn from each other, wanting to um, connect more with ourselves in order to be of use and foster a nurturing environment for students around the world.
Well, I think there is a joy, there is a magic when people gather together and speak from the heart. There's something going on in the class or in the meeting. And what happened in HumanEdu was a lot of that magic. And we have to learn how to create that magic or joy. In a sense, we are emotionally illiterate.
Mm.
We don't know how to do it.
Mm.
We don't know. And we really are yearning for it. So what I would say is, let's try to get together and find out how to live with magic.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Leandro. HumanEdu is an invitation to expand our sensitivity, our awareness, our consciousness. We are never the same when we leave after those 3 days. So I would add to what you've said very eloquently and very heartfelt that whoever comes to HumanEdu will not leave as the same person. They will leave as a person that is more attuned to the magic and the joy that you mentioned. Thank you very much, and let's continue our good work. All the best.
Thank you, Gaby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I don't have to.